Most people believe the ego is their greatest enemy. They read quotes online, watch self-help clips, and hear over and over again, "Destroy your ego. Kill it. Erase it." But what if I told you that is not only wrong, it's dangerous? Because your ego is not your enemy. Your ego is the part of you that says, "I exist." It's what allows you to speak, to choose, to stand up and say, "This is me." Without an ego, there is no identity. There is no consciousness. The problem is not that you have an ego. The problem is that your ego has been trained by pain, by rejection, by the endless pressure to look good in a world obsessed with appearances. Instead of being your servant, your ego became your master. Instead of protecting you, it started imprisoning you, hiding you behind masks, making you play roles, forcing you to perform a character instead of living your truth. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of all time, said it best. The ego is necessary, but it must never become the whole. And that's where most people get stuck. They confuse their masks with their true self. They mistake approval for love. They chase validation instead of wholeness. And the result is emptiness, fatigue, and a silent war inside. But here's the truth you were never told. You don't need to kill your ego. You need to master it. Because the moment you master your ego, you reclaim your life. This is what Carl Jung devoted his life to. And in this full course, you'll learn how to recognize when your ego hijacks you, how to stop living behind masks, and how to reconnect your ego with the deeper part of you, the self. By the end, you won't just understand the ego. You'll know how to make it your greatest ally, and that changes everything. 1. The ego's true job. Your ego was never meant to be a monster. It was never meant to crush you, control you, or lock you in a cage. The true job of the ego is actually very simple: to give you a sense of I, to help you say, "This is me. These are my choices. This is my life." Think of the ego like a translator. It stands between your inner world, the world of thoughts, feelings, and dreams, and the outer world of jobs, relationships, and responsibilities. Without the ego, you couldn't function. You wouldn't know how to say no. You wouldn't know where your boundaries end and another person's begin. You wouldn't even be able to build a story of who you are. Carl Jung explained it beautifully. The ego is not your whole self, but it is the center of your conscious identity. It's like the captain of a ship. The ship doesn't exist for the captain, but without the captain, the ship drifts aimlessly. When the ego is healthy, it does its job quietly. It helps you organize your life, make decisions with clarity, and protect your sense of self without shouting or fighting. A healthy ego doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply serves. But here's where the problem begins. Life happens. We get rejected. We get shamed. We get told we're not enough. And the ego, instead of staying a humble servant, tries to defend us by taking too much power. It stops being a translator and starts being a dictator. It stops serving and starts ruling. It wears masks, builds walls, and creates false identities. Not because it's evil, but because it's scared. The tragedy is this: what was designed to help you live authentically ends up forcing you to live a performance. This is why understanding the ego's true job is so important. Because once you see it clearly, you stop trying to kill your ego and you start training it to do the work it was always meant to do, to protect you, guide you, and carry your true self safely into the world. 2. The masks we wear. From the moment we are children, we learn that being ourselves is risky. We show our true feelings and someone laughs. We share a dream and someone says, "That's stupid." We make a mistake and someone shames us. And so, slowly, we begin to cover up. We build masks. The good child mask, always polite, never difficult. The strong one mask never shows weakness, never cries. The happy one mask, smiling on the outside, even while hurting inside. At first, these masks are a form of protection. They shield us from rejection. They help us fit in. They make life feel safer. But over time, something dangerous happens. The mask doesn't just protect us, it begins to replace us. We start to confuse the mask with our real identity. We forget who we are behind it. Carl Jung warned about this. He said the ego, instead of being a bridge to the self, becomes a stage actor, playing a role to win applause while the real person hides in the shadows. And society rewards the mask. The perfect student gets praised. The strong one is admired. The always happy person is liked by everyone. So we double down. We wear the mask longer. We wear it tighter. But the price is heavy. Because behind the applause we feel empty. Because when people love the mask, they are not really loving us. They are loving a performance. And every performance drains us. It's why so many people feel exhausted without knowing why. It's why success doesn't always bring peace. It's why being surrounded by people can still feel lonely. The truth is simple. The more we live through masks, the more disconnected we become from our true essence. And here is the hardest part. The longer you wear a mask, the scarier it feels to take it off. Because deep down you ask yourself, if I show them who I really am, will they still accept me? This is the tragedy of the ego when it forgets its true job. It was supposed to be a servant, a translator, but under pressure it becomes an actor, and the show never ends. But here's the good news. You don't need to destroy the mask. You just need to recognize it. Because the moment you see the mask for what it is, you take the first step toward freedom. 3. The hijack, ego possession. There are moments in life when you do something and later think, that wasn't me. I don't even know why I reacted like that. A small criticism makes you explode with anger. A disagreement makes you shut down completely. A little failure feels like the end of the world. That's not the real you. That's your ego taking control. Carl Jung called this ego possession. It's when the ego doesn't just guide your life, it hijacks it. Imagine your mind as a car. Normally, you're the driver, but in moments of fear, shame, or threat, your ego grabs the wheel and pushes you into the passenger seat. Suddenly, you're no longer in control. The ego is driving, and it doesn't care about truth. It only cares about protecting its image. And this is why the smallest triggers can feel like earthquakes. Because to the possessed ego, a little criticism isn't just feedback, it's humiliation. A small rejection isn't just a no, it's abandonment. A single mistake isn't just human, it's proof you're unworthy. The possessed ego reacts as if survival itself is on the line. That's why you might shout when you don't want to, withdraw when you wish you could stand tall, or sabotage yourself just when things are finally going well. And here's the trap. From the outside, it looks like you're functioning fine. You might even appear confident, successful, admired. But inside, you're exhausted. Because you're not living, you're constantly defending. Defending the image, defending the mask, defending the fragile throne of the ego. Jung warned that this is the most dangerous state of all. Because in ego possession, you don't just have an ego. The ego has you. It swallows you whole. It whispers, without me, you are nothing. And you start to believe it. That's why so many people feel trapped in invisible prisons. Prisons with no walls, no locks, no guards. The prison is the false identity the ego forces you to protect. And the more you protect it, the deeper your chains become. But here's the truth. You are not your ego. You are not your mask. You are not your reactions. You are something far greater, something deeper. And the moment you begin to see the hijack clearly, you begin to take back the wheel. 4. The hidden forces. Complexes. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I keep reacting like this? Why do I sabotage myself, even when I want to do better? Carl Jung had an answer. He said the ego isn't acting alone. It's being pulled by hidden forces within you. He called them complexes. A complex is like a little program running in the background of your mind. It was created long ago, usually in moments of pain, shame, or fear. And once it's there, it doesn't just sit quietly. It waits for the right trigger to take control. Think of the inferiority complex. Maybe as a child, you were told you weren't good enough. Maybe you were compared to others or made to feel small. Now, even as an adult, when someone criticizes you, suddenly you're that child again. The wound is reopened and the complex takes over. You lash out, shut down, or crumble, not because you're weak, but because the old program is running the show. Or imagine someone with a fear of abandonment complex. Perhaps they were rejected, left behind, or betrayed in the past. Now, even in healthy relationships, they live in constant fear that people will leave them. A small argument feels like the end. A delayed reply feels like rejection. The complex hijacks the moment, and the ego jumps in to defend against a danger that isn't even real. Jung explained it with brutal honesty. We do not have complexes. Complexes have us. In other words, these hidden forces can possess you like ghosts. They can make you act in ways that shock even yourself. You think you are in control, but the truth is, a wounded part of you is calling the shots. And here's the dangerous part. Complexes don't just distort your reactions, they shape your identity. You start believing, I am not enough. I will always be abandoned. I must always prove myself. But those are not truths. They are lies whispered by wounds that were never healed. Complexes feed the inflated ego. They make it defensive, reactive, hungry for validation. They are the hidden software that keeps the mask glued to your face. And until you bring them into the light, they will keep running your life from the shadows. But here's the hope Jung offered. Complexes are not your enemies. They are fragments of you that were rejected, pieces of your soul that are still crying out for healing. When you finally face them, name them, and bring them into awareness, they begin to lose their power. They stop hijacking your ego, and slowly they can be reintegrated into your wholeness. This is why self-observation is so powerful. The moment you catch yourself in the middle of a reaction and say, this is not me, this is an old wound speaking, you weaken the complex. You step out of the prison. You take one step closer to freedom. 5. The journey back to self. Carl Jung never told us to kill the ego. He never said to erase it, silence it, or live without it. Instead, he said something much more powerful. Reconnect it to the self. The self is not your job title. It's not your appearance. It's not even the roles you play: parent, friend, worker, achiever. The self is deeper than all of that. It is the quiet, unshakable center of your being. It is the part of you that knows who you are, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Think of it this way. The ego is like a messenger. The self is the king. But somewhere along the way, the messenger forgot its role and stole the throne. Now the ego pretends to be king, loud, defensive, and desperate to be seen. And the true king, the self, waits silently in the background. The journey back to the self is about returning the crown. It's about reminding the ego, you are not the ruler. You are the servant. Your job is to represent me, not to replace me. But this journey is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires courage, because it means facing the masks we've worn, the wounds we've hidden, and the lies we've believed about ourselves. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of becoming whole, of uniting the conscious ego with the unconscious depths of the self. And what does this look like in daily life? It looks like noticing when you're performing and choosing instead to be real. It looks like feeling the old fear rise up, but deciding not to obey it this time. It looks like listening to the quiet voice within instead of the shouting demands of the world. Slowly, step by step, the ego is humbled. It no longer craves constant validation. It no longer panics at criticism. It no longer collapses at failure. Why? Because it has reconnected to the self, a source that is steady, whole, and unshaken. And when that connection is restored, life feels different. You are no longer playing a part. You are no longer trapped in masks. You are no longer hijacked by hidden forces. You are yourself, fully, unapologetically, authentically. This is the journey back to self. It is not the destruction of the ego. It is the redemption of the ego. And once this journey begins, everything in your life, your relationships, your work, your peace of mind, begins to transform. 6. The 3 stages of mastery. Carl Jung believed that mastering the ego is not about crushing it, it's about educating it, and this happens in 3 powerful stages. Stage 1. Recognize the hijack. The first step is awareness. You must learn to notice the moment your ego takes control. Think about the last time you overreacted. Someone gave you small criticism and suddenly you felt attacked. Or maybe a door closed on an opportunity and you felt worthless, as if your entire identity was collapsing. That's the hijack. That's the ego acting like the king when it was only meant to be a servant. In this stage, the goal is not to fight the ego. The goal is to see it, to catch yourself and say, wait, this isn't me. This is my ego trying to protect a wound. The moment you can recognize the hijack, you break the illusion that the ego is your whole identity. Awareness is the crack in the armor, and even the smallest crack lets in light. Stage 2. Observe without fusing. This is where the real power begins. Normally, when an emotion rises, anger, fear, shame, we fuse with it. We say, I am angry, I am a failure, I am worthless. But in truth, you are not the anger. You are not the shame. You are not the thought. In this stage, you learn to step back and observe. Instead of saying, I am angry, you say, there is anger in me right now. Instead of, I am a failure, you say, I notice the thought that I am a failure. This small shift changes everything, because between the stimulus and your reaction, there is now a space, and in that space lies your freedom. The ego no longer drags you into automatic patterns. You start to see emotions as waves that pass through you, not chains that define you. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold the ego and the unconscious side by side without collapsing into either. It is the art of watching without being consumed. Stage 3. Reconnect ego with self. This is the stage of integration. Here, the ego is humbled, but not destroyed. The ego bows to the self, not in defeat, but in cooperation. It finally understands, I am not the whole. I am a part. I am not the king. I am the ambassador. When the ego reconnects to the self, it stops being desperate for validation. It no longer panics at criticism. It no longer needs masks. Instead, it becomes a channel for something deeper, the truth of who you are. This is where authentic authority is born. Not the loud kind that demands attention, not the insecure kind that crumbles under pressure, but the quiet, steady presence that needs no applause because it is rooted in wholeness. The beauty of these stages. These stages are not linear. You don't graduate from one and never return. You move through them again and again, each time with more awareness, more strength, more clarity. And with each cycle, the ego loses its grip, and the self shines brighter. This is mastery, not perfection, not pretending to be above it all, but walking daily with awareness, observing without fusing, and living from the deep center of your true being. 7. Life with a mastered ego. What does life look like when the ego is no longer your master, but your servant? It looks different. It feels different. It is different. Imagine this. You make a mistake at work. In the past, your ego would spiral. You're stupid. You're a failure. Everyone will see you're not good enough, but now, you smile, take responsibility, and learn. Because you know a mistake does not define you. Someone criticizes you. Before, that single comment would echo in your mind for days. You'd defend, justify, or collapse inside. But now, you listen. You take what is useful and let go of the rest. Because their words no longer decide your worth. A door closes, an opportunity is lost. Once that would have felt like the end. Now it feels like redirection. Because deep down you trust. Your value is not tied to outcomes. This is the difference between living for approval and living from authenticity. With a mastered ego, you stop wearing masks. You don't need to perform. You don't need to chase applause. You can finally breathe in your own skin. Your relationships transform too. Instead of clinging from fear of abandonment, you can love freely without chains. Instead of trying to dominate or impress, you can meet people as equals, real to real, self to self. And inside, there is peace. Not the peace of a perfect life, but the peace of knowing that whatever happens, you remain whole. This is what Jung called authentic authority. It is not loud. It is not desperate. It is not built on titles, money, or followers. It is a silent power, a grounded presence, a calm confidence that says without words, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. And that's when life opens. Because when you are no longer enslaved by your ego, you are free to live, create, love, and grow, not from fear, but from truth. So here is the truth, as Carl Jung showed us. Your ego is not your enemy. It is not something to kill. It is not something to erase. Your ego is a part of you. But it was never meant to be the king. It was meant to be the servant, the faithful messenger of your deeper self. When the ego forgets this, life becomes a prison of masks, of constant performance, of endless hunger for approval. And many people die inside that prison without ever knowing it. But you don't have to, because now you know the way out. The 3 stages are before you. Recognize the hijack, observe without fusing, reconnect the ego to the self. And if you walk this path, slowly, honestly, courageously, you will discover a freedom that few ever taste. A freedom where criticism no longer breaks you, where failure no longer defines you, where success no longer owns you, where you no longer need to prove who you are, because you simply are. This is the birth of authentic authority. It is not noisy. It does not shout. It does not beg to be seen. It is a quiet power, a presence that transforms every room you enter, not because you demand it, but because you radiate it. And this is what it means to master your ego, to reclaim your life, and to finally live as your true self. So I leave you with this. Don't waste another day living behind masks. Don't let the ego hijack your destiny. Start now. Notice your reactions. Observe your triggers. Take the first small step back to your center. Because once you begin this journey, you will never be the same again. You will not just exist. You will live. And that is the gift Carl Jung left for us all.